We kick off a brand new sermon series starting tonight. And so I want to talk a little bit about it, and I really just want to give us tonight kind of a big picture, a little bit overview, build some foundational stuff, and it's going to take us the next 7 weeks or so, all the way leading up to the Sunday before Easter. And so I'm super excited about it. Last week, if you were here or you watched online, wherever you were at, Pastor Ross came up and he gave his State of the Church address. And so the State of the Church address talks about what's going on in the church over the next year, some of the different sermon series, things that are going on. And he gave out this magazine, and our theme for this year is Refined by Pressure. Refined by Pressure. So everything that we talk about this year, the sermon series, the things that we do will come back to kind of this general theme. And if you didn't get one of these magazines, you can grab one of them on the way out. And it's just going to give you information about the stuff that's going on this year at the church. And so, again, every single sermon series this year is going to dig deeply into Scripture with this theme in mind. And I think it's important because the reality is every single one of us in this room, whether you are young and dancing around and going to children's ministry, or you are old and you're at the later stages of your life, all of us in between at all ages, we're all dealing with pressure in some way, shape, or form. All of us. It's just a reality of life. And so, as we kick off tonight, let's talk about those different stages in life just real briefly. And some of this you'll remember if you're a little bit older, you're in the midst of it right now too. But like for kids, right? I mean, there's pressure that shows up early in your life. In classrooms, pressures in friendships, learning how to fit in, how to behave, how to be liked. There's pressures in all of that. You learn really early in life the pressure of figuring out what does approval look like? How do I need to act? What do I need to do to get the approval of the people around you, whether it's, again, in a classroom with a teacher or your peer group or with your teachers. There's pressure there. When you get older and you're a student or a teenager, we've got a lot of those in here tonight, there's a different type of pressure that begins to show itself, right? You've got the pressure to conform to the things that are going on around you. You have the pressure to perform in different ways, whether that's on the athletic field or you just feel like you need to be somebody in front of everybody else. There's pressure there. You've got the pressure to curate a certain type of image that you want. You've got the pressure of deciding who you are and what you want to become at that age in life. As you're a student or teenager, you start feeling that pressure and people are asking like, what do you want to be when you grow up? What college are you going to go to? That pressure starts to take place, and you've got the pressure of relationships in new ways like never before. You've got the pressure to figure out how are you handling substances, the things that you're putting in your body more than you had to when you were a little kid. And so pressure's everywhere. And then as you roll into young adulthood, right, that pressure shifts into decisions that feel permanent in your life. What career are you going to have? Who are you going to marry? What are those relationships? You have pressure for the first time really when it comes to finances. Pressure about success, and what does that look like? I don't know if any of you that have worked through that stage in life, or maybe you're in it right now too, I've thought a lot about it this week. You have this certain type of pressure to where you start to feel like, am I falling behind in life? When you get into your early 20s and early adulthood, kind of through your 30s, you start to look around at all the different people, where they're at in their careers, their relationships, maybe they're starting to have kids, and you start to feel this pressure like, okay, am I where I'm supposed to be at this stage in life? And then for us, older people like me who are in the middle of their life, in their 40s, the pressure continues to grow, but it begins to look a little bit more complex, right? I've got now, for me and for my wife, I've got the pressure to provide for 4 kids. Some of you in here at this stage of my life, you've got the pressure to provide for kids that are in college or to take care of older parents or people that are aging around you. There's that type of pressure. You've got the pressure to hold everything together all week long with the complexities of schedules and practices and all the things that you have going on. There's that type of pressure. And then you've got the pressure of I've thought again a lot about this week too, the pressure of managing disappointment. Whether that's the disappointment of what you thought your life was going to look like at this age, the disappointment that your children may be going through in different ways, whether they make the basketball team or they don't, or they thought they were going to make these grades, or they thought they were going to be here. You're managing that sort of stuff with them. There's pressure as a parent in that. There's pressure with your spouse and your relationships changing in a different way, maybe like never before. Maybe you've been through a divorce, and now here in the middle of your life, there's all sorts of complex pressures that come with that. And I think there's times, at least for me, in juggling all those different things in the quiet at night, I have found myself at different times, not all the time, but at different times, with this pressure in my soul thinking, okay, is this how it was all supposed to be? Is this how it was supposed to feel at this stage in my life? And then for those that are in this room that are near retirement, there's that stage in life where you're an aging adult, and the pressures don't just disappear, right? They begin to change form. You have the pressure, and I've talked to some people in this room, you have the pressure around relevance. How do I continue to stay relevant? There's pressure there. What is my purpose? How is my health? What's my legacy going to be? That's pressure. And what does it mean to live faithfully here at the later chapters in my life? That's all different types of pressure. And so we start out tonight, there's different stages in life, but I think the reality is still the same for everybody sitting in this room. And it's this, that pressure is always present, and pressure in every single way, whether it's positively or negatively, it's always shaping us, right? It's always shaping us in some way. And I think at times, right, we look and we think, okay, the big pressures in life, maybe a lot of the things I just described, they're obvious. We see all those things. But again, I think pressure in and of itself is always there. It's always there. But I think we have become so accustomed to what it feels like to have pressure on us all the time that we think that that's the natural way we're just supposed to live our lives, with this pressure that's surrounding us. And I think as a society, we often wonder why. Why is there a mental health crisis? Why is that rising? Why is there anxiety everywhere? Why are people just so exhausted? Why does it seem like addiction just runs rampant in all these different places? I think the pressures of being a human being in this world, I think they're vast. But so often, we don't even recognize the pressures that we just swim in every day that are surrounding us. There's a well-known story, and I think an illustration, at least that speaks to me, that highlights this a little bit. It's a simple story. You have probably heard it before. It's a story of two young fish, and the two young fish are swimming. They're swimming along, and they come upon this older fish. And as they swim up to this older fish, the older fish is just kind of there hanging out in the water. And as they pass, the older fish looks at the younger fish and says, "Good morning, boys. Water's fine, isn't it?" And the young fish kind of look at each other and they keep swimming on for a little while and they keep going, and then they kind of look back and, okay, the older fish is in the distance, and one of the younger fish turns to the other one and says, "What's water? What's water?" I think that's how pressure works. It surrounds us so completely all the time that we just stop noticing it. It shapes us so constantly that we confuse it with reality itself. We assume the way things are the way that things must be. So the values, the pace in our life, the expectations, the compromises, the distractions, the noise, we don't feel the pressure because we've never lived anywhere else. It's what it's like to be a human being. And that matters because pressure doesn't just influence what we do. It trains us in thinking what feels normal. It teaches us, right? Pressure teaches us what to love, what to avoid, what to fear. And this is important. Over time, pressure can quietly rock us to sleep without even knowing it. It can rock us to sleep without even knowing it. And that's, at least for me, as I have deeply and prayerfully considered this, as we're kicking off this series the next 7 weeks and talking about pressures that refine us and what this all looks like, I think it's exactly why following Jesus deeply, deeply matters. That's why seeking his wisdom matters. And that's what we're going to do over the next 7 weeks. We're going to name the pressures in our lives. And instead of just letting them lull us to sleep, we're going to learn how to follow Jesus faithfully right in the middle of all of it. So over the next 7 weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to open up the book of Proverbs. We're going to study the book of Proverbs, and we're going to let it speak to us and tell us what we need to be thinking and the wisdom that's drawn from it. And you might be asking, why Proverbs? Well, let me answer that question for you. Proverbs, I think, exist for people who live in the water, live with pressure surrounding them, and that's true for all human beings. And so Proverbs exists for people that are surrounded by pressure, surrounded by voices and expectations, pressures of everyday life. You can look in the book of Proverbs and you can draw things out of it to help you navigate big emergencies. But I wouldn't say it speaks to that, but I don't think that's really what it's trying to do. I think the book of Proverbs is really a book about formation. It teaches us how to wake up to the reality and live wisely under pressure, instead of being shaped by it without realizing it. And I think the person who writes Proverbs, right, that person experienced pressure in a very intimate way. Most of Proverbs, as many of you know, has been written by Solomon, King Solomon, the son of King David, the David and Goliath David. And so Solomon, he knows what extraordinary pressure is like. When he takes over the kingdom, it's at the height of its reign, with all sorts of expectations because of his father David's legacy and all that he had done. And so Solomon, right after taking it over, right, he experiences pressure to lead well and to judge wisely. He's got to manage the wealth and the power, the relationships, all the influence that he has. So he knows what pressure is like. There's pressure from surrounding nations, pressure from his own household, pressures that come with success, and then also pressures that come with failure. And Solomon knows it well. And Solomon doesn't just experience pressure externally in all those ways. He experiences pressure internally. The book of Proverbs, and what I love about it, it's honest about the tension, and this is true of all of us. We see it in Solomon's life. It's true about the tension that exists between wisdom and foolishness. And it's because Solomon lived in that tension. Solomon knew what it was like to seek God sincerely. And he knew what it was like to follow the Lord and to figure things out. And he was praying and he was seeking answers. He knew what all of that was like. But Solomon at the same time knew what it was like to drift away from God. He knew what it was like to compromise. He knew what it was like to let comfort and sincere desire also slowly pull his heart away in the wrong direction. So that's why Proverbs, when you look at it, you could take it as kind of a rule book for things, but it really doesn't read like a rule book. When we study the book of Proverbs over the next several weeks, it's going to read like a father just pulling in his son really, really close and just whispering him and trying to teach him and train him and say, I need you to pay attention. I need you to pay attention. The path you choose under all the pressures around you, they matter. So again and again, Proverbs names those quiet pressures in life. It's the pressures that don't just shout from the rooftops, but it's the pressures that slowly, in subtle ways, form all of our lives. Proverbs speaks to that. It's like the pressure to succeed at any cost, the pressure to fit in, the pressure to take the easy way instead of the faithful one. The book of Proverbs understands, I think, what we often forget. And that's this, that pressure doesn't just test us in big moments, it trains us in all the small ones. Pressure doesn't just test us in big moments and trains us in all the small ones. And so if we're not aware of what's shaping us, we will eventually become something that we never intended to be because of the pressure that's around us. As I begin to close tonight, as we're just covering this very briefly, setting the stage for what we're going to be jumping into over the next 7 weeks, there's a story that I think highlights this well. It's a story that you all know, probably at some level, and I want to tell it to you tonight. And I want to tell it to you in the framework for what I just said when it comes to pressure, and I think it'll hit home with you. There was once a kid whose parents realized at a very, very young age, this kid was really, really good at golf. He was really, really good at golf. He was different. He was special. It was like he was a prodigy. And the kid's dad was a professional golfer too. So the household knew the pressures and all that went along with being a professional golfer, what it took, the type of training, the type of time. And again, at this young age, this kid, they realized, man, this is not just talent. This is something very, very rare. And as you all know, with kids that are prodigies and are that talented, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. There's a lot of pressure on the kid to perform the way that everybody says you're going to be able to perform and do the things that they say you're going to be able to do. There's pressure on the parents and the sacrifices that are going to need to be made, probably on schooling and in time and training and the amount of cost. There's a lot of pressure there. And from a young age, this guy's life was shaped by that type of pressure. It was also shaped by the amount of discipline he had. It was shaped by the winning that took place. For this kid, as he grew up, golf was not just something that he did, it was someone that he became. And all the things, all the sacrifices, all the pressure in some level, it worked. This kid ended up becoming the greatest golfer that the world had ever seen. He shattered records. He won majors. The sport itself was shaped around him. And from the outside looking in of this person's life, it looked untouchable. He looked focused. He looked controlled. It almost looked mechanical. When this person went out on the golf course, it was almost a no-brainer that this person was going to win every time he stepped on the golf course. But pressure doesn't disappear when you succeed. It just changes form. Behind the scenes, he carried the pressure of all those expectations from the time that he was young. And his identity was wrapped up in the golf game, the pressure that comes with money and fame and all that was going on. And slowly but surely, things for this person at the height of his career begin to slowly unravel. The discipline that had made him great on the golf course did not translate into the wisdom that he needed off of the golf course. And slowly and quietly, pressure shaped him in unhealthy ways. Not through one catastrophic moment or decision, but through small ones, private ones, ones that were unseen. And one day, everything collapsed. One evening, this person gets in a car and he's in a car crash. And out of that moment, there's this revelation that takes place. It's revealed that he'd been struggling really mightily in his personal life. He was struggling with substances. He was struggling with unfaithfulness, among many other things. And it all began to unravel. And soon after that moment, at the height of his career, his sponsors began to leave. His reputation was absolutely shattered. And I think what shocked people the most wasn't just the fall and what had gone on and taken place. That was big. But I think one of the biggest things was his public perception as a golfer beside his private life. People were trying to reconcile the two. Tiger Woods didn't lose everything because of one mistake. His life unraveled because pressure had been forming him long before it broke him. But years later, after entering treatment and rebuilding relationships through injuries, through surgeries, and setbacks, in the midst of it all, Tiger returned. And he didn't return as the dominant force that he once was, but as somebody that had been refined by suffering. Suffering that was caused by, I think, the pressure around him from a young age, suffering that was caused by his own decision-making. But when he returned, he was older. He was wiser. In all ways, he's a little bit slower, but I think that he was more grounded. And after being away from the game and trying to make it back, it was 5 years before he ever won a golf tournament again. He won the Tour Championship in 2018. And then in 2019, 1 year later, Tiger Woods, for the first time in 15 years, won the Masters again. Let's watch it.
Many doubted we'd ever see it. But here it is. The return to glory.
Jim Nantz in that moment says the return to glory, right? I don't think the return to glory had anything to do with golf. And I don't think the roar of the crowd, it wasn't just about golf either. It was about redemption. It was about a man who had been crushed by pressure that had been shaping him since the time that he was young. Pressure that framed his reality and shaped how he saw the world and quietly guided his decisions. Pressure that promised control but ended up distorting the things that truly mattered in his life. And in that moment, what mattered the most to Tiger Woods was not another green jacket. For those of you that don't know golf, when you win the Masters, they give you a green jacket. He had several of those. It wasn't another green jacket that mattered. It was wrapping his arms around his children. It was embracing his mom. Because transformation in the life of a human being happens when we finally realize, you and me, when we finally realize that the true nature of reality is not found in trying to manage the pressure around us, but is found in surrendering our lives and our decisions to the wisdom of the creator and author of our lives. And that's what brings us to where we're headed over the next several weeks. Proverbs invites us to see reality as it truly is, not as the illusion shaped by fear and power or convenience, but the deeper reality revealed by God's wisdom, a world where choices matter. And formation is happening every day and the pressure is real, but it's not ultimate. We live, you turn on the news, you read the newspaper, if you still do that, you scroll on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is on social media. We live in a world where division and violence and injustice and fear are all around us. And it is easy to think that nothing makes sense or that evil is winning. But Scripture tells a different story. It tells a different story, that wisdom still wins and that God is still God. And this matters tonight a whole lot, because when we wrap up here in just a second, we're going to head downstairs and we're going to baptize Hadley Holden. Baptism is a declaration about reality. Baptism says that beneath all the chaos, all the pressure, beneath all the competing voices, there is a deeper truth. That Jesus is Lord. That death does not have the final word. That new life is possible. That we don't have to be shaped by the world alone. In baptism, somebody is saying, I know that pressures are real, but I'm choosing to follow Jesus anyway. This is the work that we're going to step into together over the next several weeks. Over the next 7 weeks, we are going to learn how to stay and live awake, and how to see clearly, and how to be refined by pressure and not crushed by it.